Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to the segment of Khoj Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. Our recitation is Maj Mahalla Tija. Teriya Khaani Teriya Baani, bin nave sab param pulani, gur seva te har naam paya, bin satgur koe na pavanaya, hau vari jiyo vari, हर सेती चित लावणिया हर सच्चा गुर भगति पाइया सहजे मन वसावणिया रहाओ सतगुर सेवे ता सब किछ पाए जेही मनसा कर लागै तेहा फल पाए सतगुर दाता सबना वथु सबना दाता सबना वथु का पूरे भाग मिलावणिया ਇਹ ਮਨ ਮੈਲਾ ਇੱਕ ਨਾ ਧਿਆਏ ਅੰਤਰ ਮੈ ਲਾਗੀ ਬਹੁ ਦੂਜੇ ਭਾਏ ਤਠ ਤੀਰਤ ਦਿਸੰਤਰ ਭਵੈ ਅਹੰਕਾਰੀ ਹੋਰ ਵਧੇਰੇ ਹਉ ਮੈਂ ਮਲ ਲਾਵਣਿਆ ਸਤਿਗੁਰ ਸੇਵੇ ਤਾਂ ਮਲ ਜਾਏ ਜੀਵਤ ਮਰੈ ਹਰ ਸਿਉ ਚਿਤ ਲਾਏ ਹਰ ਨਿਰਮਲ ਸਚ ਮੈਲ ਨ ਲਾਗੈ ਸਚ ਲਾਗੈ ਮੈਲ ਗਵਾਵਣਿਆ ਬਾਜ ਗੁਰੂ ਹੈ ਅੰਧ ਗੁਬਾਰਾ अज्ञानी अंधा अंध अंधारा बिष्टा के कीड़े बिष्टा कमावें फिर बिष्टा माहे पछावणिया मुक्ते सेवे मुक्ता होवे हਉ मैं ममता सबदे खोवे अंदिन हर जियो सच्चा सेवी पूरे भाग गुर पावणिया आपे बख्शे मेल मिलाए पूरे गुर ते नाम नित पाए सच्चे नाम सदा मन सच्चा सच्चा सेव दुख गवावणिया सदा हजूर दूर न जानो गुर शब्दी हर अंतर पछानो नानक नाम मिले वडियाई पूरे गुर ते पावणिया. Composed by Guru Amar Das, the third Nanak. The first section talks about the need to recognize that all sources of life, that life is indeed the Creator's. And it says, Teriya Khaani Teriya Baani. This is referring to the sources of creation. Khaani, literally meaning mine, the depths from which life is emerging. The Guru is saying, Teriya Khaani, all the sources, because it is held commonly that there are four sources or processes, if you will, of creating life. Namely, andaj or egg for birds, jairaj or womb for mammals, setaj or sweat, dampness, humidity for louse and mite, etc., and utbhuj for earth, for vegetation. So these are the generally accepted classifications within the Indian systems, that there are four primary sources through which all life emerges. And that's what the Guru is pointing to when he says, Teriya Khaani, yours are all the sources of birth. Teriya Baani, yours are all the constructions of form. Bani means speech, but Bani is creative as well, because speech is creative. So therefore we have adopted form instead of just speech. So all the sources of birth, all the construction of forms belongs to you. The Creator Self is being addressed as you, Teriya, yours. And what he says is that those who are bereft of self-knowledge, that is to say, who are only seeing through the delusion of self-doubt, namely the ego, cannot perceive this. They do not see this, because this knowledge has to come through Guru wisdom, Gur Sevate. Har naam paya, bin Satgur Koe na pavanaya. In other words, It is only through that insight that you will recognize the presence of the Creator in everything. Why is this important? We will see that as we go along. And of course, the Rahau Pauri in these Ashtapadiyas has always been one of salutation and homage, adoration for those who have filled their consciousness with self-knowledge. How vari jiyo vari, har seti chit lamanya. And if you do that through devotion to Gur, the enlightener, then the true self is found effortlessly. Sahje manavasamanya. There's no resistance here. You just have to know the right method, and the right method is the Satgur. By following the Satgur, the source of all things is found. Satgur Seve, ta sab kich paaye. Sab kich is all things, but it refers to that source of all things. With self-guidance, that is to say, through the true enlightener, the knowledge of the source becomes apparent, and then with guidance of the self, all aspirations are met. Jehi mansa kar lagi, teha phal paaye. In other words, it changes your life's complexion altogether, because now you're equipped with tools that you didn't have before. And these are, of course, intuitive in nature. And so, in this sense, it is the true enlightener who is the giver of all things, because we are finding self-knowledge through the true enlightener, the Satgur. And as has been said previously, there really is a continuum between the true enlightener and the Har. At the end of the day, they are really the same thing. The Satgur being the end of the channel with which we can communicate to begin with. And then gradually, as our knowledge develops, it just spirals upwards, and we are able to use more subtle tools like intuition. And now here's the state of the mind as it ordinarily exists. It is sullied with self-doubt and love of duality. Love of duality essentially means that it is caught in attachments and aversions. It is outward looking. And for that reason, it cannot perceive the self within. Eman mela iknatyai antar mel lagi. So this is like a stain on the mirror, which prevents you from seeing the reflection of yourself. And here, very pointedly, it's being said that the self is within, wandering to different regions, engaging in ritual bathing at pilgrimages, only serves to fill the mind with self-pride and adds to the dirt of the ego. Tat tirat disantar pave ahankari, the one with self-pride. Hor vadere haume mal lavanya. Vadere, even more. It makes things even worse. Here is a very pointed statement on what the right method is. It is not by any stretch external. Now, this is not a forum to tell anybody what to do. If you wish to engage in ritual, that's your desire. But remember, if you truly wish to follow Gurmat and discover the self within, then that process has to move within. Unless you do that, all of this other stuff that is happening is really for naught. So again, the Satgur is primary in this process, without which we just keep accumulating our ignorance, and it grows and grows. Baj Guru hai and gubara, agyani anda and andara, extremes of ignorance. In fact, we've been a manmukh, one who is wrapped up in the ego, is being referred to as bishta ke keede, worms of excrement. It's that that low, so to speak, and so filthy. So that's really the word. It's filthy and dirty. That's how strongly the Guru is emphasizing what needs to be done. Now, we need the Guru for us to realize that we are indeed mired in dirt and filth. It is not readily apparent to us, but if we follow the Guru, it will become so. So, mukte seve mukta hove. Here is the principle of becoming like the one that you devote yourself to. And therefore, again, the Satgur is the first step. And then always a word of caution so that we don't get filled with self-pride. Meeting the self happens when the self bestows its benevolence. Appe bakshe mel milai. We can only do so much. The rest is grace. And for that, we really have to become receptive and ask for benevolence. Ask for this. Hunger for it, in other words. You really have to be hungry for this. Otherwise, it makes no sense. And then, ultimately, once you have this grace, you will recognize the self to be within and not far away, and realize that it was always present. So the takeaway for us is, we see that just about every Shabad in Gurbani challenges our perception of reality. We are being told that what you see and what you believe to be true is in fact not the way reality is. What you think is reality is not reality. We are only perceiving a very small part of what is otherwise a highly integrated system, by which I mean it is a system that exists at multiple domains, multiple realms, and we are simply limited in the realm of time and movement, time, space. That is where Haume arises. Haume just arises in this space-time continuum because we need the movement, we need a perceiver and a perceived. That is just the nature of where we are. But that's not all. So therefore, Gurmat emphasizes the need for greater and greater knowledge. And knowledge moves in an ever-expanding spiral. When you go around a spiral, you come back to the same spot, except that you are at a higher turn and you see your previous knowledge, or where you were before, the previous landscape or spiritscape, but you see it from a broader perspective. It's like climbing up a mountain, and then suddenly you see things that are not visible to you when you're on the ground. Just think of this as being the same kind of process. But when you want to increase knowledge, you also require more sophisticated tools to detect and discover that knowledge. So inner knowledge requires a specialized tool, which Gurbani calls the Satgur. It's a method, it's a tool, it's the knowledge, all rolled into one. That is what we need to begin the journey. And so what that enables us to do is it helps us to combine the world of the senses with the world of the intuition. And then we begin to live at a truly existential peak. On that note, until the next time, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.